Ron is a solar energy industry consultant with Celentano Energy Services. He started working in the solar energy field over 40 years ago, with more than 25 years focused on solar photovoltaics. Generally, his experience covers technically and policy-related fields, including system design, commissioning, testing, performance monitoring, installation, project oversight representing the customer, expert witness regarding technical assessments of PV systems and products, installer/code official training, curriculum development, rebate program administration. He's been involved with helping shape most all of Pennsylvania state laws and regulations in solar energy over the past 2 decades, including net metering, interconnection, Pennsylvania solar share requirement, closing the borders, and many other policy-related issues. Currently, he is president of Pennsylvania Solar and Storage Industries Association and vice president of Mid-Atlantic and Storage Industries Association for Pennsylvania. He is also the technical director of Philadelphia Solar Energy Association, board member of Power Up Gambia, and he holds a BS in physics and MS in the field of mechanical engineering. But I think Ron would tell you that the height of his career was when he put a solar meter on top of our roof in Paoli about 25 years ago and measured the how much sun our roof was getting. And it was only 53% of the available sun. So we had a lot of trees on around our house and on our property. So we didn't qualify for programs that required at least 70% of solar capacity to be measured. So I'd like to turn the program over to Ron.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Can you hear me okay? I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, boy, thanks so much.
I can't see you very well.
Oh, we can't see me. You can't see me.
I'm gonna
Lighting?
highlight him. I'm working on it, Jerry. He's
Oh.
gonna be large and in charge. Just a second.
Yikes. I didn't shave very well this morning. Well, thanks for having me. It's always a challenge to figure out what to prepare for presentation, and I have to say this is probably a little bit more of a mishmash than I would have liked it to be. So I'm covering some maybe simplistic things. You may know plenty of it already. I'll kind of breeze through it. I wasn't sure exactly who was going to be on here, but we can certainly keep it open for more questions after that. I did want to point out, as you were talking about some things that were coming up. I don't know how many of you are familiar with MSSIA, the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association up in northern PA. They have a great presentation tomorrow night on vertical farming. So you could just look them up, the MSSIA, the MAREA, and you can register for that if you're interested. So I've been pretty fascinated with the concept of, urban vertical farming, so it's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, side thing. Let's see. So I suppose I can get to share my screen, right? Nope. You have to.
Let me let you do that. Just a second.
Yep.
What is it, V Maria?
I'm going to put it in the chat.
You are good.
The MAREA.org is the actual website, but it's the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association. Great group. They have great webinars all the time.
Ron, you should be able to do it now.
Okay, great. So, share. Okay, you should see. Are you okay seeing my stuff?
Yep.
How do I get rid of this thing? I can't.
So Are you looking to,
You're getting rid of that thing on top. I remember doing it once before. It's like this. I almost stop sharing.
You gotta, if you go to slide show, click on that.
Yeah,
and
Yeah, it's not that. It's this thing that I'm gonna start from the beginning here. It's this thing I'm sitting on top of my screen. I know there's a way to get rid of it.
it's not showing up to us, so it looks,
You
it all
don't
looks,
see it.
no,
Oh.
it all looks good.
Wait, you see it or no?
I don't
we
see
did-
it. All I see is your slide.
Okay, but you see my front slide though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Okay, that's fine. All right, that's okay. That's probably pretty much it. Now, there's some other things on my screen that are like obstructing, just annoying. I can't figure out why they're there. But anyway, okay. So I will go through several things, and I think let me see here. Oh, how come now my screen isn't? Why isn't my screen working? Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, that's good. I got out of there pretty good. All right, so this is always a graphic that I like to present. That this great guy Richard Perez, who's been doing solar for many decades now. He's a well-known scientist up in New York, and he kind of put this thing out in terms of how you can compare the different resources we have. And of course, you see solar here as a continuous resource, having by far the most, because it's all relative to the amount of fossil fuel type or limited sources we have on the planet versus renewable sources. And it just gives a little perspective on how much solar can really constantly provide for all of our usage going forward, unlike all the other resources that are there. Oh my gosh, how did that happen? Oh, I went to end. That's interesting. Oh boy. So let me go back up here. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. And this is you probably have seen this map a million times. And when you look at how much radiation that we get in Pennsylvania area, which is up in obviously further up, as compared to what comes in on Germany, or Germany basically gets as much irradiation as Alaska, southern Alaska. So we obviously have plenty of solar that comes in. This is recent data that I kind of pulled off the internet in terms of the amount of installation installation of solar that's gone in throughout the world here, and we're at like about 183 gigawatts of DC was installed in just last year, and it's kind of hard to see where we land in this, but I think we are I'm a bit colorblind, so this was challenging for me to look at this thing, but I think we're about 100. I think we're like what was it, like 21? I think we're about 21 gigawatts maybe that was installed in the past year. Oh, I'm sorry, 121 gigawatts. So let's see, going forward here. This is kind of showing the typical dropping in costs of solar compared to the cumulative installation that has been going on. But there's some really interesting things or unfortunate dynamics that are happening as we speak with how that cost is actually starting to go back up again. I'll go over that a little bit. This is breakdown really of where we are with the other competing types of energy sources that we have. Solar, though, is picking up quite a big amount of new resources. You can see this is really showing of new resources that are being planned. Solar is picking up a larger and larger share of those new generation resources. And getting to looking at the cost, this is a very recent data that's been coming out, and this is broken down in residential, commercial, utility, and the utility is broken down into fixed tilt and tracking. And this is dollars per watt, basically, of DC capacity. And the residential, and they show like a comparison the last quarter of 2020 and the last quarter of 2021. So you could see how it's changed, and you could see 2021, it's gone up a little bit. Now that's probably because of the fact of the supply chain issue that we had experienced from COVID, and as a result of that. But we are also starting to hear more about, I don't know if you've heard about, not even a month ago, the U.S. Department of Commerce had unfortunately put in some, they had heard it, I guess someone had sent in a proceeding of some issue with regard to where the solar products are coming from. And they have put a kind of an investigation that's going forward for the next couple of months, not only coming out of China, but coming out of Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and I think it might be the Philippines. And it's actually completely stalled the entire market. I mean, enormous. This has been like the biggest thing that's really challenged the solar industry right now, and that a lot of projects are suddenly put on hold, and the prices immediately has started to tick up considerably. So, and I'm saying all of this because you really want to start thinking about, if you're on the edge of thinking of whether to go forward with some solar projects. I mean, you are going to see a price hike in the near future. I don't know how long it'll sustain up there, but you know, it's if you have that 30-day window where you have a period of time that you have a locked-in price for a project to go in, you may want to really seriously consider taking it because of that reason. This is again showing how solar has, when you're looking over by 2021, how much solar has picked up the majority of new generation capacity that's being installed. So you can see how it's progressed when you look at 2020, 2010 going, and as you move across on how it picked up more and more of that share, and it's really taken up the majority now of what's going in being installed. This is in the upper left graph. This is coming out of the PASSIA 2021 report on their alternative energy portfolio study, report they put out every year. And the upper left shows the breakdown of the coal, natural gas, nuclear, and renewables across the U.S. Then down below on the right is Pennsylvania, and you could see how the gas has really picked up considerably in Pennsylvania as we move out towards 2019, 2020, unlike how it is really across the U.S. on average. So this is what we're being faced with here. But of course, our coal is dropping off considerably as well, and we're not picking up much at all in the renewables. Again, across the U.S., we see definitely an uptick on renewables, but we see it pretty flat here in Pennsylvania, and that's because of our limited AEPS structure right now. This is the status of where we are with Pennsylvania. In the upper right is the PV capacity of PA that's been installed on an annual basis, and down the lower left is on a cumulative basis. This is as of literally just a couple of days ago, this data that I collected. I mean, able to get this from the PUC APS administrators database that's online. You can always download this information. And this is of certified systems that are actually in Pennsylvania. So we have about a little over 700 megawatts of DC that's installed right now in PA. This is the number of systems that represents, again, in annual and in cumulative. So we have almost 34,000 systems. Most of these are small residential systems. This is kind of a breakdown of that. You can see enormous amount of these are less than 15 kW. So they're mostly residential, small commercial. And this is a very unusual, as compared to a lot of other states. I'll show a little bit later, although I guess I won't show that kind of detail, but we have a lot of small systems in Pennsylvania as compared to a lot of other states relative to the megawatts that we have installed. So you can see down towards the bottom, we have very little large scale or grid scale size systems. And that would be defined pretty much from that greater than 3 megawatts to less than 5 megawatts. From that point down, the 14 1 and 6 in terms of number of systems. That's going to be your generally your grid scale projects, the ones that don't net meter, the ones that are selling to off-takers, all the generation to off-takers at the wholesale rate. We have a lot, obviously this is reflecting that we have a lot of net metered systems. There's another breakdown of where a lot of those systems are around by county, both in numbers and in capacity. And this is again relatively recent. This is as of really I guess it was last year. And we, as you probably know, our APS, we've already reached our requirement level in our alternative energy portfolio standard, and we had 0.5% of solar there. But we are, of course, over that at this point. There's more solar that's being installed, regardless of the fact that we have already reached our 0.5% limit or requirement. This is a pretty cool map that you can see where solar is located in Pennsylvania by zip code or by county. This is also, and I have the link down below, but it's under the same PUC AEPS administrator. You go to this website and you can download all the records of installations that have gone in, and it's not only solar, it's everything under the AEPS tier 1 and tier 2. But there's a little button there that says qualified facilities map. This is very recent, that just came out. You click that and you could see Pennsylvania, and you could see all the resources, and you could see under the select fuel type. If you click that, you'll see the whole list of all the different breakdowns of types of resources. So it's beyond solar, or even down to the tier 2, like you could see all the different kinds of resources, and you can locate them that way. This is a bit of more of a blow up here, where I'm showing around media. If you zoom in and you click onto any one of these dots, you'll see the number of systems and the total number, the cumulative capacity under that zip code, if that's what you would have selected. So it's kind of cool to see that kind of. And this is pretty recent. This is actually very, very recent data. This is the grid scale side of the story under the PJMQ. So again, grid scale, the non-net metered systems, the ones that are the very large systems, are usually the 3 to 20 to 100 or 200 megawatt size systems that are going in, and the applications within PJM, the regional transmission organization. And what's happened is back in, I guess, around 2020 is when it started to elevate the number of applications that went in to PJM. But in fact, it turns out that across the country, solar has been really ramping up enormously in a lot of these RTOs. And has really been putting a strain on the whole process of how they process these applications. So right now we're at like almost 20 gigawatts of systems of applications that are sitting in holding state, and it has been such a strain almost at PJM that they put a 2-year hold on these applications to try to sift through them and just pull out the ones that are most reasonable to go forward with for processing, because a lot of them are really kind of stuck in there as placeholders, and it's really clogging up their whole review process. So this is actually another reason for things really getting very sluggish in the PJM territory. And of course, PJM really represents about 13 states in the eastern part of the U.S. This kind of shows how Pennsylvania compares to other states in the East Coast, and when you look at it just by cumulative capacity, we rank around 5th place, I guess, relative to all these states. But when you rank it megawatts per capita, we actually come in dead last. So it's pretty pathetic in how Pennsylvania still ranks compared to so many of these other states. And I show that little table down below how Pennsylvania ranked. And in 2019, we were 25th. Then we actually got better at 17th. And then we dropped even below 2019, and we're now at the 29th position as of 2021. So a lot of this is because a lot of other states are moving forward with improving or increasing their requirements, and we have been completely unable to push the needle for that in Pennsylvania. A lot of this is all, as we've been told many times over and over again, it's because of Reggie. A lot of the Republican legislature really hates the Reggie so much so they don't even want to move anything, going forward, no matter even trying to sell them on the enormous amount of job potential that solar and other renewables can provide. They really didn't want to hear it. They just really wanted to not do anything until they could, throw Reggie under the bus, which, as you probably already know, it's been put out in the bulletin as of, I think it was Saturday. So now the lawsuits are coming up for Reggie. So we'll have to see how this is all going to pan itself out. Of course, we also have the primaries coming up in the next in the next month. So that's also putting a stall. So we've been very unsuccessful with moving anything with growing solar or renewables in Pennsylvania for a long time. And as you can see, how does it compare to our neighboring states? And we are just looking pretty sad as compared to so much better potential going on in other states here. This is always an interesting thing. I put this together where you're kind of comparing how much land, or looking at how much land would be needed for at least even getting 10% of all the solar that we would need to generate, well, to have enough solar to generate 10% of Pennsylvania's usage. Because we often hear about how much land is going to be, sacrificed, and with our farmlands and things like that. And so I did this graphic of looking at all the land that there is in Pennsylvania in acreage, then how much of that land is croplands, pasture lands, and woodlands, and then how much is abandoned mine lands, and then to show 10% solar. And originally, we have in a couple of our bills, we have like maybe 3-4%. If I had it that low, you wouldn't even be able to see the bars. So I went back to looking at our Pennsylvania Solar Futures study and said, okay, let's look at 10%. And you can see how little of the land that really is consumed for reaching 10% solar. It's obviously very, very little and would not have any impact on the farmlands that is being so over concerned about. The other interesting thing is how much still out of state is selling their credits into our compliance market. And that's because we are open to all the PJM. The solar, we did close the borders back in 2017, but because of continued contracts that exist and they're slowly expiring, as they expire, then they can't be renewed, and then the solar has to be actually installed, or has to be in Pennsylvania to meet the requirement, that 0.5%. We still see 20% of solar is coming from out of state. Probably by the end of 2023, that will finally expire enough, all those contracts, that the rest of it will be coming in from in the state of Pennsylvania. But I also want to point out even tier 1, 20% of tier 1. Again, we have 8% of tier 1, 0.5% is solar, 7.5% is the non-solar requirement, although it could be solar included there. But of that 7.5%, 20% of it is only in Pennsylvania. The rest of it is coming from out of state. So we are still, again, bearing all this, costs that we ratepayers are paying for and not getting the benefits, the jobs. We're not getting, we're getting almost none of the benefits whatsoever out of this. So this sometimes has to be questioned. Now you look at tier 2, they closed the borders just, I think it was over a year ago. And that has really made a big difference with how that's going to be working out, even though there isn't as much of it. Let me see. Oh yeah. So I just want to emphasize again what we do have one of the best net metering laws in the country, because it's not based on the percentage of usage of a site. It's more based on capacity. So as a residential, if you have enough land, you could put up to a 50 kW system on your property, even though you have 5,000 kWh of usage. And so you could be selling all that excess at the price to compare, or maybe basically about the generation price of what it costs. We have no aggregate cap, which a lot of states do have a cap of some sort, some percentage of total usage across the state or whatever. We don't have an aggregate cap. And all the excess that we have at the end of the year that we might generate, we get at the price to compare, which is about that generation price, unlike a lot of other states where it might be, you get either it's at avoided cost or the wholesale price, or you actually have to forfeit it altogether. So it's actually, we have quite an attractive net metering structure in Pennsylvania. I'm going to this so much. We have this, the main thing that you got to, of course, pay attention to, which you probably already know, you got to stay with your EDC, your electric distribution company. You want to stay with PECO if you go with solar. Otherwise, you will not get the value that you could get. Otherwise, you'll lose some of that net metering value. I won't go into this. You guys are already on top of that. You're probably familiar with the time of use rate that PECO has. It's actually a very good structure. It's one of the better ones I've ever seen, actually. In fact, a lot of the analysis I've done is if you have solar and it's even meeting about more than 50 or 60% of your electric usage on an annual basis, it's probably a good reason for going with time of use, because you will probably get a lot more value out of it. It's only a 2-hour window during the business days, but you get such a high amount of value for that, from like the 2 to 6 o'clock period of time. Even though in the wintertime, of course, 4 o'clock, you're already seeing darkness. It's already dark out there. But I think it's still, a lot of the analysis I've done all kinds of simulation, hourly models of different kinds of scenarios, and it just seems to hands down on an economic basis, the revenue actually of value increases when you have your solar on a time of use rate. I'm getting into this is kind of your basic rules of thumb that I've demonstrated before. I think you're more advanced than that stuff right now. That's why I was having trouble like trying to figure out what the best things to put in this presentation. This is a really good website to look on. I work closely with my colleague over in western part of Pennsylvania, Sharon Pillar, where she has a great website that she's put together over the years, the PA Solar Center, and we work very closely together doing a lot of legislative work, moving different kinds of bills. We've put a lot of bills together. We helped really, I guess, get the closing of the borders done several years ago. We have a lot of different bills kind of in there for growing solar, even though a lot of them aren't moving out. But it's amazing that there are at least 27 bills that are mostly solar bills that are in place right now, and everything is pretty much stagnant, including the community solar bill that's there. But if you go to this website, you'll see a good breakdown that talks about all these different bills. You know about community solar, so I won't get into this too much. This is probably, I'm getting now the last just few slides here are going to be some projects I've worked on, but not this one. We just recently had our 8th solar summit back in earlier in March, and we had this company that we knew that was doing aquavoltaics. And this is, I think, the largest aquavoltaic system. You've heard of agrivoltaics, but this is aquavoltaics. And these guys really got into, I was quite intrigued with what they did. I think this is in New Jersey, I believe, but they've been doing a couple of projects there, doing some projects in Pennsylvania as well. So it's a very interesting kind of nuance, if you will, of how you can take advantage of using solar on top of ponds or reservoirs. These are just a couple of projects that I've worked on over the years in Philadelphia with a group called Onion Flats guys. I'm doing a lot of their solar consulting work. This is solar on green roofs, which was sort of, we tried to experiment with and really was working out well. This is in Northern Liberties on top of a 4-story townhouse. This is in Northern Liberties as well. It's a passive home apartment building, 29 units. And I was, I basically told these guys, like, listen, if you really want to try to maybe get close to meeting some of your usage, you got to lift it up off the roof. You can't just have it on a flat roof on a balanced system. So by doing that, going up 8 feet higher, you were able to get that, array going beyond almost the edge of the roof. So this has been an interesting project, which I'm working on still right now. The other interesting thing about this project is you can see those white boxes or white rectangles that are along on the wall there. This has been so long overdue. This project really was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the last parts of this project was to have this sort of behavioral modification element to it. And on those white squares or rectangles, there are LED lights that are up above each of them. And this is supposed to all be programmed that each of those squares represents an apartment. And it's not directly related to the one that is next to it. It's kind of random which ones they are. And they're supposed to be showing a color. Ideally, it was supposed to be showing a color of either red, yellow, or green. And it was based on the usage of each of these apartments. Now, we also have a lot of monitoring that are going on that I installed. And so you could see daily usage or monthly usage of each of these apartments. So basically, it's supposed to be a shaming technique that's supposed to show, hey, my apartment showing red, I guess I must have left the TV on too long. So I got to change my behavior. So that was sort of the concept behind it. We were in the process of actually finally installing the LED and the programming for this to be going forward on this. So it'll be interesting to see how it really works out. But it's it's kind of a clever concept, I suppose. This is how that looks on the roof, the green roof. And again, another view there. And under the left, you can see on the bottom of it, there's a lot of parking there, and they're also expanding this with EV charging, and we're going to try to get into doing a lot of EV charging modeling as well with that. This is where it's got some nice flowers going there. This is another project that I did with these guys on Front. It's called Front Flats. It's on Front and Norris in Kensington area. And it was basically putting, the architect basically wanted to have solar. He wanted to really try to get a net zero, out of an apartment building. Again, about 29 units here. So it was putting it on all three sides of the building, as well as the roof over the green roof. And we have monitoring going on this right now, and we're just about so close on the edge of actually clearing a zero energy use at the end of the year. So this is kind of a view of that from a drone perspective. This is kind of from the inside of it. You can see these are bifacial modules. And this is my last slide here, but this is basically the monitoring of that. And you can see how much generation there is. The curve, the pink curve that there is really the total usage of the building. And of course, you could see the solar that's coming in and really blows the doors off of it when it's a nice clear day, or even in most of the time anyway. So, and this is really the collective of, as the sun rises, it hits the eastern wall, and as it moves across the southern wall and then the western wall, always hitting the canopy on top of the roof. And it's the collective of all of that coming together in that summation. So that was about it. And it was kind of a mishmash. I have to apologize for that.
So Ron,
Yeah.
don't apologize. That was wonderful. And I see Chuck already has his hand raised. So if anybody wants to ask a question, it would be great if you could go down to reaction. Is that right?
Okay.
And raise your hand. Chuck?
Ron, I was wondering, we need Courtney's cooperation on this, maybe to, I don't know whether it's just me, but I think we could all use a little tutorial on the community solar. And especially if you think that's a step of advocacy that is ripe now for public advocacy.
It's probably, I'd say it's maybe worth, let's wait to see. I mean, you could certainly, by all means, it's always worth doing that, but probably waiting for, like I said, the Reggie thing to be alleviated a little bit, and also certainly after the primaries, that's going to be an opportunity to start to really push hard again against the legislators. I have to say, some of us aren't crazy about the existing bills or bills that are there for the community solar. Not to say that we wouldn't support it. And I say we, some of us in the solar industry, because it's very rich incentives. But hey, if it were going to happen, we're behind. We should have it in place. It should be clear that, unlike some other states, you're not going to get as rich of a credit as some states, I think, have. You almost get full net metering. In the way these bills are structured, you would only get as much as maybe the generation part of it. So maybe about half, like for residential, you would get about half of the credit by being a subscriber. But, it's still a great opportunity if either you can't afford it or you have too much shading or, you're a renter. There are all reasons for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple, and you may have heard about the local solar bill that actually has gotten a lot more traction. And I'm not sure the status of that right now. We would call it the Duquesne bill. It's really not at all a community solar bill whatsoever. I think it's 1161. I'm sorry, I don't have these off the top of my head. It's been a little while. It's basically like a green price, a green tariff bill, So, I mean, the one kind of good thing is, hey, if I'm gonna, you know about the energy co-op in Philadelphia, right? I mean, you could, be a customer of theirs, and you're going to get solar or wind from Pennsylvania, and that's a good thing. A lot of times you get in these green tariff rates or deals, and you're getting wind from Texas, and you don't know really where it's coming from. But this particular bill that's out there right now would have to come from Pennsylvania, from a solar facility in Pennsylvania, and so that's the only good thing about it. But people shouldn't be fooled by the fact that it's clearly not community solar. You're paying probably a premium for that that source of renewables. So
is that sufficient, Chuck? Did you have a follow-up?
No, I yield the floor to Joy.
Joy is next, and then Bill. Joy?
So hello, and I have a couple of general questions and then a couple of specifics. So what is the size that triggers the PUC review? Is that the 3 megawatts?
Actually, it's no, it's actually lower than that. It's 500 kW now.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That was that was something they threw in there several years ago. So now, and it doesn't mean much of anything. I mean, it's not like they really slow things down. In fact, when they threw that out there, I was very quick to say, well, you cannot make that extend the timeline for for the review. So that was acknowledged. It's more, I think, for them to just be alert, to be alert about that happening. So their concern has always been about large systems coming on, and is really the merchant generators that are maybe coming in board. So that's why they kind of do it. I haven't really heard too many times that has slowed anything down.
So what you were talking about as something being on hold is not that size system?
No, what I'm saying is on hold is on the PJM side. So this is the grid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the PJM. It's not the net metered size of projects.
Okay. And then I just recently signed up. Well, I pre-signed up for the time of use, but Pico lost my thing. And then so I re-signed up, and I just got my first bill with that.
Okay.
And what I'm curious about is I think this next month they reconcile. Right. So
yeah.
So I'm wondering if I'm going to get the actual like time, the time of use rate back for the ones that are banked, or if I'm going to get what I always have gotten, the but the price to compare. So
well, you get what's interesting about it is that you, with time of use now, you have 3 price to compare value, right? Okay.
Right.
So, but then there's also this really terrible glitch of that you don't really get, everyone's losing out on the time of use. I mean, rather on the annual surplus and the price to compare part of that, as you may know. I don't know. What the utilities seem to do is it should be at May 31st that's when they should true everything up, but they don't do it that way at all. They basically use the last billing date of your bill. So maybe your bill for May was May 1st. They'll true it up for May 1st instead of May 31st. And what happens is you lose all that banked up value that you may have had, and you get the price of comparison rather than the full retail value up until the 31st, if you know what I mean. There's a petition that's been in for about over a year now to the PUC to correct this, because it is absolutely, it must be corrected. It's actually very wrong that all the utilities take advantage of this, and they certainly can clean it all up so we'll get full value. So I'm not really answering your question, but I think because of that glitch is probably a good reason why it's not going to come out quite right anyway.
So
how much? What's your percentage of usage is offset by solar?
Well, it's only been 1 month. So
Okay.
So like for 1 month, I had like 80 kilowatt hours for banked for the peak, the super peak, then like 200 for the off peak, and then I had to pay for the super off peak.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
sun isn't shining. So
Right.
so we'll see when it gets reconciled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so that's what it is. I mean, I would love to see your bill. Oh man, can you send me it? Because I'm really curious in how they laid out the 3 banks, because I'm really curious to see how that looks. And of course, as you know, it doesn't cross over the buckets, right? So it has to stay within the bucket that you generated it. So you'll never. It's interesting because sometimes you might wonder, is it better to charge my EV during the super off peak, or maybe I should charge it during the off peak and let the weekend be able to have the solar offset it, and I'm not quite sure which way is the best way to go with that. So
then I have 2 kind of more in the weeds questions. I was at the Delaware County Sustainability Conference, and somebody approached us because they want to have some kind of development on a brown field, and she wants to come up with a alternative for solar on a brown field.
Kathy Cook.
Yes, you talked to her.
I got an email from her just the other day.
Oh, okay.
Tell her. she was looking for incentives, and I only got a piece of what was going on. Right, it's in Malvern, I believe. Right, so and contaminated properties or something like that, and they're trying to look at all the costs that went into the mediation of that, what it would take to reclaim all that, or just do solar, and would it make sense? So yeah, I'm sorry I don't have much more to say about that, but
And then here's the real tricky one. So I know, Jack Barnett was trying to figure out the SREC forecast. And right now we're really off. Like, we were thinking the SRECs were going to go down since the APS did not get extended, but it's gone up. Do you have some wisdom?
I've talked to so many people, aggregators everywhere, and everyone is just constantly very puzzled by it, because like I said, we have, not only do we have, like I was showing, that we still are taking 20% of out-of-state solar to meet our requirement, although that's going to fizzle down. Even within our state, we have more than 0.5% of solar that's already in place. These are all, like, we are oversupplied. How can this possibly, you would think that price would drop down to nothing at this point. And it's theoretically, it should be dropping down to very, but it's actually going, it's gone up to $41 instead of 40 as of last month. So it seems to be hanging up there, and we cannot explain or figure out why. I do get concerned about sometimes and how when installers will project what what you're going to get as a revenue stream, they've finally mostly have gotten much more conservative, and they should get much more conservative. I wouldn't think you should even think 5 years out at whatever, maybe $30 or something like that. And that might be a safe way to think of what that revenue might be. But yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
Well, that's okay.
I mean, with our, and I will say that with the bills that we put forth, and we have we have a new bill concept that we're trying to sell now, and it might come out soon, at least in a legislative note. We'll have to see. But we have a Senate and a representative, that Republicans that are very interested in maybe moving on this. It's about closing the tier one borders, or partially closing them. But within that, we would still increase our requirement from 0.5% to 2% by 2027. So by closing the borders, we wouldn't ask for more renewable. We wouldn't increase the overall tier one renewable, just because everyone's bitching about, oh, it's not fair. But okay, fine, we won't increase it. We'll increase our distributed generation portion of it. And by partially closing the borders, and maybe even saying only the adjacent states are allowed to sell into our state, not all 13 states, that would force a lot of those contracts we would grandfather the contracts, it would still eventually run out, and that would force large solar to be developed inside the state. Sorry about my dog barking. But so it's sort of a natural progression of how we can maybe drive more solar to be built in the state of Pennsylvania.
Thanks very much for those questions, Joy. I want to make sure we have time to get to Bill.
I'm done.
Thank you, who has been waiting patiently. Bill?
Thank you, Courtney. Great presentation, Ron. 2 questions. You mentioned the connection queue for the grid scale solar. And I had read somewhere that Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, was looking at some kind of change in rules to force the regional authorities like PJM to figure out a faster way to resolve those queues. Do you have any insight on that, or is that something should we be lobbying with FERC to get them to adopt a rule that would allow more solar to get approved?
Well, that's part of what that is about. And it's not so much pushing them. And we actually had a really interesting, when we had our solar summit over a month ago, or we had some really good panelists talking about that were on PJM and also that worked on the customer side or developer side on PJM. It basically came down to that typically what would be the applications that would go into PJM would be like, huge, like gigawatts, just gigantic projects. And because the cost of solar has dropped so much and there's been such a huge development surge over the years, they were getting tons of very small applications and they were getting overwhelmed with the enormous number, like 5, 10, 20 times more than what they can process. So they had to come up, and they are still coming up with a way of more efficiently going through a lot of those applications. And that's what this 2-year holdout period is all about. It's not 2 years freeze, it's more like 2 years that they want to start to cherry pick the ones that seem to be reasonably credible for going forward. A lot of these projects tend to they're just trying to corner the market and lock it in. And these things, and the queue is just that. It's everything is in line. So any one application could just clog up everyone else behind it. So they're trying to pull out those particular applications that are clogging up that queue, if you will, and so other ones can move forward. So that's kind of what that's all about. There is another thing that's more related to FERC, though. That's in regard to sort of for the PUCs to, and I don't know this in great detail, but for the PUC to oversee how net meter projects can be in an aggregate format, being able to sell into the PJM market. Okay, so there's an opportunity for even for someone in there with in a house with solar and batteries and storage, they could be selling into in an aggregate. They would be aggregated with other residential houses with storage as well, and they collectively could be sold into selling electricity into the market, for ancillary services and things like that. So when prices are high or low, they basically could sell and buy back and forth. So there's an opportunity that might happen with that, and that's under the FERC scenario. There's a few other FERC things that are going on too, which I'm sorry to say I'm not just on top of at the moment.
Okay. The other quick question I had, again, just reading stuff I read, it seems like a lot of proposals are now hybrid, solar plus storage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that much in Pennsylvania, either residential, like behind the meter storage, or situations where a hybrid proposals coming in at the PJM level for solar plus storage?
Well, for residential or even small commercial or net metered systems, I guess I'm still kind of old school. I get a little annoyed with the fact that people I relate it to the fact of getting the fanciest new cell phone that just came out and everyone just jumps on it. It's that shiny metal thing that seems to attract a lot of people, and they want to get storage all of a sudden. It's like, well, do you really need storage? In one way it's a good thing for, resilience, if there's outages, but do you have a lot of outages? Where do you live? We do know in certain places like media and other places, there's some problems, quality of the distribution lines, maybe good reason to have some kind of backup storage. But by and large, it's going to really increase the cost. And then on top of that, there's this whole thing about, we're pushing for lithium type batteries, which is going to now require, more mining and all these other things that are going on. I'm still kind of old school with lead acid batteries because, even though that's not anywhere as efficient, takes up more space and volume, that is recyclable down to the 99% amount. You could take your batteries and you could bring them up to Allentown, to Deca Solar up there, and they actually completely recycle them down to nothing. Right now, the lithium product, they're trying to get to the point of being able to look ahead and figure out how they can be recycled in the future, but But at the same time, there's going to be lots of money that's associated with it. Also, those types of batteries, they are pretty high tech. I mean, they all basically have computers on board. It's not just the battery. There's a lot of sophistication with those things. So you're paying for that. And I guess I just think of not pushing so fast to just get that, drop another $10,000 or more for having that kind of fancy storage that maybe you don't need at all. Now, of course, just adding a little bit more to that, we're talking about, you know, what about EVs and coming in, and the EVs can then provide that storage, you know, and that's all growing too, and that's going to be coming down the road for sure. So there's going to be an opportunity, and you can kind of almost do it, but not fully quite do it, where, you know, you can have the, you know, the Ford truck, you know, coming in and being able to supply your house for everything that's been unstored if you had to, if you wanted to. But these inverters that are on board these units are not necessarily ones that can you know, synchronize with the grid. So we just need a little bit more time, I think, for all these things to really pan themselves out to work properly.
But now with grid scale storage, that would allow solar to provide power beyond when the sun was shining. Isn't that the market
Well,
value?
with storage, yeah, with storage, right. So when you get into that level, right, sure, this whole thing about how, and it's not as much needed here as much as like in California and other places where, and even up in New York City area, whatever, where there's a lot of congestion. So you could use storage as a way to reduce the peak. So as you know, the price of the wholesale price of power goes up when there's more and more demand going on. So in the summertime, when all the air conditioners are on, you're increasing that demand, so that all these expensive peakers come on board, right? So they're very polluting, they're expensive, and that higher price all comes back to us ratepayers having to, you know, that's what it's going to cost us in the big picture of buying electricity. So if you could have solar coupled with storage that's clipping those peaks, it's basically taking care of not having those peakers that come on, then that's an opportunity to reduce wholesale pricing for all ratepayers. So that's definitely down, looking forward, going, you know, with I think how things can go forward in the future.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you very much. It's a good presentation.
Yeah, I just recently saw a map, by the way, which is really fascinating. And I have to remember what link is. It showed where all the peakers were in even the Philadelphia area. You could see where they were and how many times they've been on or not on. I mean, how often they've been on. And it was pretty mind-blowing to see that, because that can help lay out framework for, okay, well, let's say, what does it take to not have that peaker come on? You know, what kind of storage do you need in order to mitigate that? You know, so there could be some ways to start to really look at that more closely.
Yeah, thank you.
I see two more hands, and I also see that we're at 8:30. So what I'd like to do is, Ron, if you're willing, I am going to release folks that need to go, but do you have time to answer two more questions?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you all for coming. We're going to record the two remaining questions, but if you have to go, we certainly understand. So blessings on all that you're doing, and we'll be back next month to hear from Joy Baxter. So thank you all. Joy, you had a question.
Yes, just a quick question. I wrote down a wrong web address for that map of the different solar installations for the net metering, Ron.
For Pico? Wait, no, sorry.
No, for all of Pennsylvania. You had showed the map and you
Oh
showed
yeah.
solar. Do you remember where to go for that?
You want me to send that to you, or?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll just send it. Yeah. Okay. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to the group as well. It's well, you know, I also I mean, I'm more than happy to give this a PDF of this thing. So
could you do that? I would appreciate that, and I will share it with the group if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
That would be because you've got great charts and graphs, just
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you, Ron. And Janet, you had a question for Ron?
Yes, I have too much shade to have solar on my house, so I have chosen a renewable supplier and just came off a 2-year contract with AEP, which I think is Texas Wind. And I was surprised to see that the rate for renewable energy has gone up 50% in the last 2 years, which I find a little hard to understand. But the second point is I went with a company called Brighton for a renewable energy supplier, which again, I don't think is local, but because they were a little bit less than AEP. But what, do you know anything about Brighton and what kind of energy they're providing? And two, do you have any idea why the renewable energy prices have gone up 50% in 2 years? For the
No, but
RECs, I'm buying like a REC. I'm not getting actual, you know, I'm trading it or whatever, but I think it's wind in Texas. And
Yeah,
this
no.
Brighton company is also in Texas. So I just don't know anything about them, but I was choosing them simply on price.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about Brighton necessarily. It's really been, it's always been very,
I can't
very.
hear you.
Oh,
I don't know.
you
Do I
can't hear
need to
me?
do-
So I can hear him. Janet,
Oh.
can you hear me? Janet's muted.
Mute.
Okay, so you're not muted now. So Ron, can you hear me, Janet?
What happened here?
Janet, can you hear me? Okay.
Well, so I'm
All right,
not
let me
sure.
see if I can up my volume here.
There you go.
Can
Try
someone-
that.
Yeah, I am. Okay, that's a little better. Yeah, I don't know why it went down, volume went down. Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything about those suppliers at all. But I'm not surprised to hear about the rates going up. I'm kind of blown away by the fact that and this happened many times. Someone, would tell someone about, hey, you got solar now, you should be going back to your default supplier, and they would look at their bill and then they would realize that they're now paying something like, this one guy was showing he was paying like 3 times higher than Pico's rate. He didn't even realize it. This is what's scary about when you just have auto pay and you don't even pay attention to what's going on anymore. You don't know about those escalators that are behind the scenes on a lot of these, suppliers third-party suppliers that you've
Right.
selected. So you just got to be really, really careful with that. I just tend to not really want to buy from out of state as much as I can. I'd rather, in fact, yeah, I don't know.
What alternative would you suggest?
Well, I was with the energy cooperative in Philly forever, and I have to say they really are expensive. I eventually did go back to Pico myself, and I will have to also say I'm kind of guerrilla solar with what I do, which is not right, but at least with the energy cooperative, you're getting, that's actually very credible, renewables.
Well, I'm not in Philly though. Do they do the suburbs?
No. Oh yeah. You're anyone in Pennsylvania. In fact, yeah, you can.
Oh, I see.
Oh yeah. You don't have to be in Philadelphia. No, absolutely
Okay.
not. Yeah. You'll pay definitely like more than twice as much than the Pico rate, I think, or almost that much. You're
Mhm.
paying more. I have to tell you that. Not to say there could be other alternatives. You could look at the what do you call it? The PUC. There's a link that you could see all the different suppliers are out there, and they do have a filter for telling you which ones are renewables and supposedly which ones are renewables.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I
Pennsylvania.
use. I use that, but.
But I have to say,
I don't know about Brighton, but, so
Yeah.
I was thinking, since I can't have the solar on my roof, I was thinking of trying to put it on land. Do you know if that's economically prohibitive or better than doing it on your roof, or to put, the solar panels on some land in your yard? And are there
Mhm.
regulations about that, or can you do that?
It's all about the municipality where you live. By most all means, you definitely can put it on your property, and there's no reason. It's going to be a little bit more costly than putting it on your roof, but there's a lot of opportunities. You could talk to a lot. I mean, I can give you some solar companies that you could talk to if you want to have that
Okay.
at least checked out, and they can give you an assessment of what you might be able to do there.
That'd be great.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Janet.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, Ron. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. If you would send me a PDF of your presentation, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
sure. I was
Thank-
wondering, is
Thank you.
Ed JB still on?
He is.
Okay, I want to say hi. And thanks for your support for your contributions to Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. It's been a long time since I said hi to talk to Ed.
So he's there. He
Muted.
yeah, he's muted. So
Okay,
Ron, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been fabulous.
okay.
Chuck, thanks for all the work that you did.
Ron, you helped with our system in New Jersey. We're now in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay, okay.
We have a sizable system here, and we're still with a co-op, and we get net metering through the co-op.
Well, it depends. I'll tell you.
They won't provide net metering to any new customers.
Yeah, I would you really, if your system is big enough to maybe even do 50%, you really should probably go back to your default supplier. I mean, again, it's about the economics, but you don't, if you're generating any surplus that carries over into the next month, the third-party supplier isn't obligated to pay you for that surplus and give you any credit for it. So you do lose revenue if you don't stay with your default supplier, such as Pico or PP&L or whoever. They're obligated to give you all that retail, sale back, but the third-party supplier isn't. And I know for a fact the co-op doesn't. They struggle for a long time. I was on the board for a long time, and we were struggling to figure out how to do it. It just costs them too much money for them to give the credit to the solar customers. So that's all I have to say about that.
Well, good to see you.
Yes.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you all. I'm gonna say goodnight.